Mother didn't even look up from the Christmas turkey when she said it. You need to move out. No frustration, no build-up, just a cold sentence dropped between blinking tree lights and the steam rising off the meal I paid for. My aunt froze mid-bite. My sister stared at her plate like it might rescue her. I kept my voice steady even as something inside me snapped clean. The room smelled like cinnamon and pine, but all I could taste was betrayal. I didn't scream, I didn't argue. I just sat there, realizing I'd been evicted from the home I was single-handedly keeping alive. Before I tell you the rest, tell me where are you listening from? So I know I'm not alone. And when you've heard my story, tell me what would you have done in my place? My life didn't always look like a Christmas table where I was the only one paying for every warm light in the room. A year before that night, I was living in a small downtown apartment that felt like the first real space I'd ever built for myself. Quiet mornings, plants on the windowsill, secondhand furniture I'd refinished by hand. It smelled like fresh coffee and freedom. I paid every bill with money I earned in my IT work, and for once I felt steady. Then my mother called. Not the usual "how are you" kind of call. It was the kind that came in with uneven breathing and sentences breaking apart. She told me the house I grew up in, was weeks away from being lost, mortgage late, utilities overdue, savings gone. She said she didn't know what to do. That house wasn't perfect, but it held the last pieces of my father. His handwriting still marked the doorway where he measured our heights. His jacket still hung in the back of a closet carrying the faint scent of cologne. No one had had the heart to wash away. The thought of losing that place made something in my chest twist, so I moved back. My mother cried with relief, hugging me so tightly she almost knocked the breath out of me. She called me her lifeline. For a while I believed her. I broke my lease, packed up my small apartment in a single weekend. I told myself it was temporary just until she got back on her feet. My sister, still in college, thanked me for helping Mom through a rough patch. My aunt, the one who lived nearby, told me she admired my responsibility. But weeks turned into months, and gratitude turned into expectation. I paid the mortgage, then the electricity, then the phone plan, then the groceries, then the little things my mother claimed she needed, the pricey creams, the upgraded internet plan, the dinners she hosted, for friends where I did all the shopping and cooking. Whenever I gently asked if she'd applied for any new jobs, she sighed like I was stressing her out. It's hard for someone my age, she'd say, leaning back on the couch I bought under the lights I paid for. My sister would tell me, just be patient. Mom's overwhelmed. But the truth was simpler. I was no longer a daughter helping her family. I had become the engine of the entire household, and everyone expected me to keep running. The shift didn't happen overnight. It crept in quietly the way cold seeps through old windows slow enough that you don't notice until you're shivering. It started with the internet. One evening while I was logged in for an after-hours server issue, my mother stormed into the hallway. She didn't yell, but her voice had that sharp edge she used when she wanted to cut without looking like she was cutting. Ever since you moved in with all your gadgets, this house runs slower than molasses. I can't even watch my shows. Her shows, the ones streamed on the upgraded plan I paid for. Then came the dishwasher. I'd come home from a 10-hour shift to see the clean light blinking and my mother leaning against the counter on her phone. "Oh, good," she'd say. "You can unload it. My back's acting up today." Her back miraculously never acted up on shopping days with friends. My sister, still seeing our mother through soft lenses, repeated her favorite line whenever I confided in her. "She's just stressed. Be patient." Patience was all I had left to give, and it was running out. By early December, the house didn't feel like the one I grew up in. It felt like something closing in on me. Every bill, every chore, every sigh from my mother thickened the air. I kept telling myself Christmas would ease things, that celebrating together might remind us we were still a family. So I threw myself into preparing dinner. I cooked the turkey, baked the casseroles, bought ingredients from the nicest market in town. I even picked out a small gift for my mother and sister, wanting to believe generosity might bridge the growing distance. When Christmas Eve arrived, the house glowed. Lights blinked on the tree, the table was set, and the food smelled warm and familiar. My aunt came over to join us, cheerful and unsuspecting. For a moment I let myself breathe, but beneath the surface I felt it, the tension tight as wire, and then the wire snapped. My mother didn't lift her eyes when she said it. "You need to move out." No warning, no explanation, just the words laid down like a final decision already made. The knife in her hand glinted under the dining room lights. My aunt stopped chewing. My sister stared straight down, and there I was, sitting at the table. I paid to keep standing. I could have shouted, I could have asked why, I could have begged for basic fairness. Instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me. "Really?" I said quietly. "I pay the rent, the bills, and the groceries." My mother shrugged the most casual dismissal I'd ever seen in my life. It wasn't anger, it was indifference, like I'd served my purpose, and my expiration date had arrived. And that was the moment right there at that Christmas table, when something in me stopped trying to hold us together. I didn't leave the table in a storm. I didn't slam a door or break a plate the way my mother would later claim. I simply stood up, pushed my chair back quietly, and excused myself. My aunt watched me go with wide, unsure eyes. My sister pretended not to notice. In my old bedroom, the one with the floral wallpaper I hated. Since middle school, I sat on the edge of the bed and waited for the tears that never came. All I felt was an emptiness so clean it almost scared me. A year of excuses, of swallowed frustration, of doing everything for the family had finally burned itself out. So, I made a decision. I pulled my suitcase from the closet. It was dusty, untouched since I moved back home to rescue my mother from losing the house. I wiped it off with my sleeve and set it open on the bed. I didn't pack sentimental things. I packed the essentials, the clothes I actually wore, my laptop, my chargers, a few personal items. Everything else suddenly felt heavy, tied to a life that had been draining me instead of holding me. For the first time in a long time, the next step was mine. I booked a week at a motel across town. The confirmation email hit my inbox like the first breath, after being underwater too long. I waited until the house was silent, until the wine had pulled my mother into her usual deep sleep before slipping out. The snow was falling in soft waves, the kind that hushed the entire world under the glow of the porch lights. It almost looked peaceful, almost. I drove away without looking back. The motel room was small and smelled faintly of old carpet, but it was the first space in months where no one sighed loudly at me for breathing wrong. I slept for 10 hours, straight. The next morning, I waited for a message from someone, my mother, my sister, anyone to notice I was gone. But the phone stayed silent. Day 2, day 3, nothing. It wasn't relief anymore, it was clarity. My absence wasn't a crisis to them, it was a convenience. And then, in the middle of scrolling through apartment listings, my sister finally texted me. "You won't believe what Mom is telling everyone." The lies were almost theatrical. According to my mother, I had screamed, broken things, stormed out, abandoned her with no warning and no money. She had already called relatives. They were rallying to her side. It wasn't enough for her to push me out. She needed to rewrite the story. Something tightened inside me, not rage but resolve. If she wanted a story, I'd give them the truth, and I'd let the truth do what I no longer had the energy to argue. I didn't fire back at my mother's lies. Not at first. I let them sit, let them grow, let them spread until the picture she painted was so exaggerated that even people who adored drama started to raise their eyebrows. Meanwhile, I stayed in that tiny motel room surrounded by quiet that felt both foreign and familiar. I went to work. I kept searching for apartments. I waited for the storm she created to reach me, and it finally did. The first sign was my aunt, the one who lived out of state, calling me, her voice soaked in judgment. "I heard you threw a tantrum on Christmas," she said. "Your mother is devastated. How could you walk out on her like that after everything she's done for you, everything she's done for me?" I almost laughed. Almost. But instead of fighting, I just listened, let her speak, let her believe the script my mother had fed her because I was done arguing behind closed doors. If I said one word in anger, it would be twisted. If I defended myself privately, it would be ignored. If I confronted my mother directly, she would cry on cue. There was only one thing I could do: pull everything into the light, So that night, in the motel's dim lighting, I opened my laptop and wrote a single post. No anger, no name-calling, no emotional language, just facts. A clean timeline of the year I paid every bill, every grocery trip, every payment that kept the house afloat. I wrote how Christmas dinner unfolded with no shouting, no scene, no broken dishes. I wrote that I left quietly because I was told to leave. Then I ended it with one sentence. I'm safe and I hope we all find honesty from here forward. I hit post. Then I turned off my phone. The next morning when I powered it back on, it nearly lit up the motel room. Notifications poured in. Texts, messages, comments, missed calls. The truth had cracked my mother's version right down the middle. My cousin, normally quiet, messaged first. I'm sorry, I knew something was off. If you need anything, I'm here. Another relative wrote, Your mother didn't tell us any of this. Are you okay? My aunt, the one who scolded me 24 hours earlier, backpedaled instantly. I didn't know the whole story. I'm so sorry, dear. That must have been so difficult. My grandmother left a voicemail asking if we could talk. My sister sent a panic text, Mom is freaking out. She says, You're turning the family against her. For the first time in a year, people were seeing me. Not the villain my mother invented, just me. In the middle of that chaos, my mother didn't call. Not that day, not the next, but a week later on a gray afternoon when I just moved into my new studio apartment. A bright space with big windows, cheap flooring, and air that felt like possibility, someone knocked on my door. A soft, deliberate knock. I knew who it was before I opened. My mother stood there in the hallway, holding a bakery pie in a plastic container like it was a peace treaty. Her makeup was carefully done, her expression arranged into something between sadness and hope. I heard you moved here, she said with a soft smile. Thought I'd stop by. I brought dessert. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, not rudely, but firmly. This wasn't a visit she earned the right to step into. She lifted the pie slightly. Aren't you going to invite me in? It's cold. I didn't answer her question. Instead, I asked my own. Did you come to apologize? Her face flickered just for a moment like a candle trying to stay lit, but instead of humility, indignation rose. Well, she said slowly, I don't think I need to apologize. We both made mistakes. But that post you made, that was hurtful. You embarrassed me. There, it was. The truth, not the emotional kind, but the structural core of who she was. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry she had been exposed. I breathed in deeply. The hallway smelled faintly of someone's cooking and something metallic from the elevator. It felt grounded, real. This isn't about embarrassment, I said quietly. It's about everything you expected me to carry. It's about how easily you discarded me when I stopped being useful. My mother blinked, stunned that I said it out loud. She opened her mouth, ready to cry, ready to manipulate the moment back into her control, but I didn't let her. This is my home, I said, still calm. My life, and I'm done being your safety net. Her eyes hardened. So that's it. After everything I've done for you, you're shutting me out. The irony almost stung. After everything I did for you, I corrected. You told me to leave. I simply listened. For a long moment, she didn't speak. She just looked at me. Really looked. Maybe for the first time in years. She saw someone she couldn't bend anymore. Someone who wasn't afraid of her disappointment, her stories, her guilt. She saw someone she couldn't control. I stepped back toward my door. Take care of yourself, I said, and then I closed the door, not with anger, not with drama, just with finality. Through the peephole, I watched her stand there, stunned, holding the pie like she no longer knew what it meant. After a moment, she set it on the floor and walked away down the hallway. I didn't pick it up. Inside my new apartment felt warm sunlight drifting in through the window's walls, echoing with nothing but peace. I realized then this wasn't revenge. This was freedom. Life settled into something quieter after that day. Quieter but fuller. My studio apartment, small as it was, became the first place in years where every bill, every object, every moment belonged entirely to me. I woke up to sunlight instead of sighs. I made coffee the way I liked it. I worked without being accused of using up the internet. Silence finally felt peaceful, not weaponized. Word traveled through the family, of course. Some relatives stayed neutral. Others reached out, offering support now that the truth had aired. My grandmother asked to meet for lunch. My cousin helped me move the last box from storage. My aunt from out of state apologized again, this time without excuses. My sister was the one who changed most. She started coming by for coffee, asking how I budgeted, how I found the apartment, how I knew it was time to leave. One afternoon she whispered, "She's starting to turn on me now." I squeezed her hand. "When you're ready," I told her, "I'll help you pack." For the first time in a long time, our family wasn't built on fear, just truth. Christmas used to feel like obligation to me, like a stage where I had to perform the role of the dependable daughter. Now it feels different, not because the season changed, but because I finally did. What I learned is simple. Love without respect is just dependency. Family without boundaries is just a trap. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away quietly and let the truth speak louder than you ever could. My mother still tells her version of the story, I'm sure, but it no longer defines me. I have my own home, my own peace, and the freedom to build a life that isn't measured by how much I can carry for someone else. If you've ever had to pull yourself out of a family that kept taking without giving back, you're not alone. Tell me where you're watching from and share your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story resonates with you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's justice wrapped in grace. Silent revenge.